guys doing? Welcome back to Unique Minds of the Okanagan. I'm Rob O'Day, and I'm chilling with Rylan Cannon behind the camera. And tonight we're talking with Kevin Moore, a local graphic designer for Soft Surrogate.
Yes.
How would you introduce yourself and let us know what it is you do?
I think you nailed it. Yeah, it's pretty basic. I'm Kevin Moore. I am a graphic designer, mostly based in the music industry. I run a company myself called Soft Surrogate. It's been that name for about 10 years. I've been a designer for about just over 20. I started when I was like 15 or 16. And then, yeah, through the evolution of just working for small local bands, playing in small local bands and building it up, I now work at Rise Records / BMG Music and work with huge bands and like bands that I grew up listening to, and it's wild. I love my job.
Right, and I don't think a lot of people can get to say that.
Yeah.
Your progression. So you've been doing this for 20 years. What got you into wanting to do graphic design full time?
So, yeah, there's a few moments in my life where like, and in hindsight, I see that I was really interested really young, but I didn't know it was graphic design at the time. I used to always draw. I drew all the time. My parents always used to say like if I was having a meltdown or whatever, anytime as a kid, it was just, you could find me with crayons sitting in the corner coloring on a stack of paper, and my dad would just bring home stacks of paper from work. He actually worked at TELUS, BC Tel, for his whole entire career, and he would bring home like printer paper, and I would just draw and draw and draw. I got a guitar when I was in grade 5 or 6, and right away, like a week later, started my first band because I was obsessed with music. Didn't know how to play, but I made album covers. I made like fake CD covers and drew CD covers for my fake band that didn't, it was, yeah. And so in hindsight, that was definitely the nexus, the starting point of it. But really, I didn't get super committed and interested until like my mid-teens, and, starting to collect albums and see like recurring names of people who did album art and be like, oh, these people like do this all the time. It can be a career. And then, got a pirated version of Photoshop and just fake it till you make it. I have been doing it ever since, but like on and off in my level of seriousness. It wasn't till finally 2014 or 15 that I was like, I'm going to go all in. I had jobs, I had full-time jobs. I'd worked not in the design world, not in the music world. I was a janitor, I was a dishwasher, bunch of stuff. Worked at the lumber mill, and then was just like finally over it and wanted to be a designer. So there's a few answers to that question, but I would say officially probably about 2015, 2016, somewhere in there is when I finally buckled down and was like, I'm going to do this.
In a industry that is extremely competitive and has lots of competition, how have you been able to make yourself stand out compared to everyone else?
So yeah, tons of competition, and there's always the thing of like, there's a lineup of designers behind me at any moment that would want to be working at a record label and making album covers and t-shirts for bands. It's a dream job. It's awesome. But the thing I say the most to people when they email me and say, how do you do it? How do you do it? How do you do it? Like, what's the secret? Answer your emails. Reply to your customers. Let your clients know what's going on. Design-wise, visually, there are people out there that can run circles around me and create art that just blows me away, but they don't respond to their emails, and they're not reliable, and they're hard to work with. And it's like, a lot of my success comes from the fact that somebody emails me, asks me if I want to take on a job, and if I can't do it, I say I can't do it, in a polite way. If I can do it, I let them know timelines. If something comes up and I can't make their timeline, let them know in advance. Just be communicative.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, in the art world, there's not a lot of that. Of like, you have to kind of know like you can be head in the cloudsy and creative and artistic, and I get that personality because but you have to be both roles. You have to be that when you're creative, but you also have to be businessy and be on top of stuff and pay your taxes and follow protocol of how, and it's very much like a mixing of personality. So that was a really hard thing for me to learn, of just learning how to become a reliable person. And, you know, if the band paid me, not go off and spend it on CDs right away, but actually stay at home and get the work done. So, you know, it's a learned skill, but that is my number one advice to everyone. It's not necessarily the work and how good it is. Obviously, it has to be good and you have to be good at what you do, but being reliable is paramount.
Yes, especially it being freelance or an entrepreneur in the sense where you're creating something out of nothing to continue to pay for your bills, basically.
Yeah.
And in the music arts industry, that's not the easiest thing to do.
No, and I've had to make, you know, hard calls and, you know, let clients know, like, hey, you know, I took on this job and you told me your idea, but I'm just creatively, I'm not clicking with it. Like, it's just not happening for me. We can do one of two things right now. We can, you know, shake hands, part ways. You know, you find somebody else that can maybe nail it. Or, you know, if you're flexible on your concept, I have a few alternate ideas. Like, can we flesh those out and let's see, like, let's work together. And then that therein kind of becomes where you're not just a graphic designer, but you're an art director, which is now a lot more of my role. Where I find that where I'm at, you know, with my career, that a lot of people come to me and they don't have ideas. They're like, we just want you to do a soft surrogate piece, like just do a Kevin Moore, like that's what we want to see. So I get this cool opportunity to be creative and do my own thing, but yeah.
That's probably a huge compliment, though, too, to have people approach you and be like, I want the Kevin Moore, because now you're one of those sought after artists in the industry.
Yeah. Oh, I'm my life is constantly pinch me moments. Like I can't believe that this is what I get to do. You know, it's a dream come true, and you know, to really extend on that, it goes back to like when I decided how I wanted to start was I followed these two brothers who are just from Washington State, Don and Ryan Clark, and they have a company called Invisible Creature, and they've been doing art for, you know, 20 plus years. And when I was young, I started seeing their artwork, and their album art was just next level, and they were doing stuff for tons of metal bands. Like, I mean, obviously working, like being in the music scene, you know their work. I guarantee you've seen it. It's everywhere. You know, they've even worked for Kendrick Lamar, Kanye West, like huge artists. And just in the last like 4 or 5 months, we've become friends, and now I work with them, and it's unreal. It's crazy, but like again, you know, the pinch me moments and whatnot, and being able to, it's just the stick to itness, I guess. Like I grew up loving their stuff, and now just through process of elimination and, you know, this huge amount of competition and designers all around, you know, they start to drop like flies when they're not getting work because they're not being reliable, or they just don't want to do it anymore and their tastes change and whatnot, blah, 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 blah. Just by sheerly sticking to it, now I get to work with these guys that I, you know, idolized as a kid. So it's a weird industry, man. It's yeah, I'm pinching myself all the time. I definitely don't take it for granted. I'm definitely thankful every day that I get to just walk from my bedroom, just behind the camera there, come in here and work, and I get to, my son's bedroom is right next to me. You know, I get to do a thing that a lot of dads don't get to do, and that's like see their kid grow up every single day. I don't have to be in an office. So yeah, it's super cool.
No, it is. It's an amazing feeling, getting to work for yourself and being a parent. So getting to enjoy those moments is really cool. It's it's taken you 20 years. What kind of challenges have you faced trying to get to the level where you are?
Yeah, I mean, where to begin? It's all challenges. To narrow it down so that this answer doesn't take me an hour to get out, I would say, you know, early on, it's a lot of just getting the work, which you find that you are, to just get your name out there, you're not charging what you should. You know, you're charging less, much less, you know, doing album covers for $100 rather than $1,000, you know, or $6,000 or whatever it is that, you know. So doing stuff for really cheap and kind of being, for lack of a better term, like walked on by clients, and not really trusted yet because you don't have a name. So you're not at that point of like, oh, give us the soft surrogate, give us the Kevin Moore piece. It's like they don't know you. They just need somebody to do the thing that they need. And there's a lot of sort of abuse to people in the arts, unfortunately. I think just a lot of people don't understand that it is, it can be difficult, it can be hard. It's a job, and it's draining. And I know I'm not doing anything physical, but like at the end of the day, you're just exhausted. Like you use your brain trying to be creative all day and hit deadlines. So early on, I would say like the biggest challenge is just like getting your name out there and kind of, for lack of a better term, you kind of just get beat up a little bit and you just got to stick with it. And it sucks. And I wish that wasn't the standard, but because there's so much competition and because everyone's a graphic designer, you just got to decide like, how bad do I want this? Do I want to take the abuse for a $50 album cover or a $50 logo? Yeah, because one day you'll be able to charge $10,000 for that logo and they won't bug you as much,
Mm-hmm.
Secondarily, I would say the biggest challenge would be like personal challenges of, learning how to deal with client feedback. You spend all night working on a piece of art. You work so hard and you love it. It's perfect. You've hit all their requests, everything they said in the brief. You send it to them and they reply in 5 minutes. They don't even let it soak in and say, no, we don't like it. There is this huge, overwhelming temptation to reply with a angry email, and just like, you don't get it, and blah, 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 and letting your emotions get the best of you.
Mm-hmm.
And Lord knows I've done it. I think that's the good thing about starting designing when I was like 15, 16. I did that kind of stuff, but nobody knew who I was. So it didn't matter. But I had to learn, to like, there is feedback and people are critiquing something that you create and something that you put your heart into and your love and your passion, and for them not to like it, it hurts. And learning how to decipher that or separate that from, that it's not that they don't like you as a person. This isn't a personal attack. This is a job. And so it's still, again, going back to that, figuring out the difference between being heads in the cloudsy and artsy and creative, but then also being businessy and being like, it's just a business decision.
Mm-hmm.
What you have done doesn't work for them. And that's hard to learn, man. And I still go through it, and I'll still just open a notepad and vent to myself and write that angry email somewhere where I can't accidentally hit send. And once you get it out, you're kind of like, oh, actually,
I feel better.
what? This is fine. It's not a big deal. I know what they want now, and I can take another swing and it'll be fine and it'll be great and like no problem. So the biggest challenges are just learning how to, deal in that capacity of separating the personal aspect of giving your art and the something that is so personal and trying to disconnect from it a little bit when it comes to like the business side. And that is really hard. And, I'm still learning 20 years later,
Yeah. I find being an artist is definitely hard to put a value on yourself, especially at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, you don't want to put in too much effort for too little and then not get any like respect from it, I guess.
Totally.
But like
Yeah.
it when you are creating logos and stuff, like even at a beginner level, when you're creating a logo for a band that band's going to use for the rest of their career, and whether or not that band gets famous or not, that logo gets seen. Your artwork is still being pushed out towards the world, which is still a cool thing. But
Totally.
I definitely think that like with a lot of emerging graphic designers, a lot in North America, because I know a lot of graphic designers out of Indonesia that they don't charge that $600-700 on their first project,
Totally,
and they
totally.
have built their name up. Now they're doing some of the biggest artists. So
Totally.
it's trying to like push a younger generation into graphic designing. What advice would you give if they were to do this successfully?
Yeah, I mean, I get exactly what you mean of like, you don't want to undercharge and you don't want to overcharge in the sense of like, scaring away a client. It's hard to give advice because the way I did it is just so strange. I didn't go to school for design. I just fell into it sort of backwards. Like, it was just sheer passion, going to shows and offering bands, let me make you a t-shirt. Let me make you a whatever. And doing a lot of stuff for free or really cheap just to get my name out there. But that was huge for me. And those bands are on tour and they go to the next town, and somebody says, who did that shirt? Oh, this guy. And I was working for bands, really, really funny. I actually worked for, when I was like 16 or 17, I was really young. I'd only done a handful of jobs, but I had worked with a couple bands that were touring and blah, 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 blah. Somebody saw a shirt I had made, and they worked for Triple Crown Records, which was like brand new, was on Triple Crown, and this was before Deja Entendu, like it was their first record. And they reached out to me and were like, can you make some magazine ads? And like, I was like, yeah, I can. I'd never done a magazine ad. I had to learn how to do it. I stayed up all night, like, how do I do this? Like, I don't know. I didn't know certain super basic technical aspects of print. I didn't understand. I'd never gone to school. So I did that, did like a couple magazine ads for Brand New, like back in like, this has got to be like 2001, 2002, super long ago. But like, yeah, a lot of what I did was just trial and error. Going to shows is huge. If you want to be involved in like the music industry side of it, go to shows. Local bands need design. Local bands have the worst design, because they don't have any money. And they want a logo, and every band wants to look like a big band. That's the thing. Every band wants to look larger than life, but all they have is Microsoft Word and whatever stock fonts are in there, and they do their best, but it's terrible. There's like so much opportunity for young designers to just go to a show, and if you like a band and you're passionate about what they do and you love their music, like that'll keep you motivated. Do some t-shirts for them. Tell them you can do their album cover. Tell them you can do stuff you don't know how to do yet, and then go home and learn it. That's what I did. Like, that's honestly the biggest thing, and there's huge opportunity there. That being said, bands have no money. You're not going to make a lot of money doing it, but you will learn fast. And that's how I did it. It's not the one route. There are a million routes to being a designer. If you don't want to design for bands, then don't do that. There's like, you can go into corporate design, which I would recommend, go to school. So there's tons of different avenues. But just start, just mess around, open up Photoshop, open up Illustrator, just draw, do whatever you can, just surround yourself in it, and follow your heroes on Instagram and figure out how they did what they did, rip people off too. Like, I don't sell it obviously, but I would like try and emulate album covers, like, oh, how did they make Master of Puppets? And I would just like find crappy pictures of crosses on, Google image search, and then like Photoshop them to make it look like and I would just try and emulate stuff. Yeah. And you figure it out as you go. So
yeah, it's definitely, I think most arts you can't be taught. I'm very heavily on that. Like, even as a musician, you can learn theory, but don't rely on theory.
Totally.
They're guidelines. They're not rules.
Totally.
Art is meant to be broken. If we didn't break those, this is how we're supposed to do it.
Oh, absolutely.
We'd all have the same product.
Yeah.
And I think that's what separates you from other graphic designers, at least in our region, because from what I know, you're one of the only ones who works with major artists. And to get to that level takes years and years of hard work, years and years of struggle, years and years of being told it's not good enough. And I think that like the fact that you stayed through it and still stuck to it, now that you're on a level that you're working with, like Epitaph will reach out to you and other record labels to have major artists, like artists that I look up to, and I'm like, it's just mind-boggling to see the progression that you've made in 20 years.
Yeah.
And I think that's really inspiring for other people in the Okanagan, because being creative itself, I find, is very hard on emotions as a person.
Absolutely.
So, like, even with your own family, you'll have more support from people that you don't know than you do from people you know. And I think that's one really difficult thing as an artist, is to like accept, like, hey, my closest family and friends may not support me, but people across the world will.
Totally.
Have you dealt with that?
So, sort of, not really. My parents were always really supportive, but like in this not like super gung-ho way. I don't think they ever really knew that there was like, yeah, this is just a thing that he does with his time, whatever. Are you going to go to school? Are you going to go, what do you want to do with your life? And we just never really had those conversations. It was kind of just like, I don't know. Like I was very much like kind of flippant about everything. So I do have one story where I had a local band came over. I was young. Had been designing for a couple years at this point, so I was a teenager. But a local band. Do you remember Limited Edition? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So all those guys came over, and back in the day when the clients I was working with would sit over my shoulder and watch me work, which I don't do now. But they would sit over my shoulder, and they were all sitting, and my computer was in my bedroom, and they all came over and were working on their album cover, album layout, and my dad comes in and is like, "Damn it, Kevin, your friends didn't come over to sit on your computer. Like, they want to go do something, like, just..." Because I was always on my computer, right? So he thought that these guys just came over, and I was like, "Come on, guys, let's just do what I do every day." And then Phil like looked at my dad. I was like, "No, that's exactly why we're here. Your son is like really talented, and we're paying him money to make us an album cover." And I'm like, and it's not that my dad was ever unsupportive. He was always fine with me doing it. I just don't think he realized that the level and like what the potential was there. Mm-hmm. So right away, this thing clicked with him. I was like, "Oh, he's making money doing this. Okay, he's gonna have his own business. Okay." And so right away, like, showed me how to like register my business and start paying taxes and start.
That's awesome.
And was like, "Okay, if you're gonna do this, here's how like, yeah, like obviously he's not an artist, so he didn't know the design aspect of it, but he showed me how to run a business and how to be reliable, have integrity, answer your emails, don't leave your clients hanging." And there was a lot there that like, so yeah, I learned a ton from my parents, but it was never unsupportive before that. It was just, they just weren't really aware.
It was a hobby.
It was a hobby, and they were like, fine. That's the thing, is I was just so young doing it, right? They didn't have to be concerned with what I was going to do with the rest of my life when I was 16 or 17 or whatever. It was like, yeah, whatever. Like, he just works on his computer. And then the same with music. Like, I was touring and playing in bands at that point, and they had every member of the band living in their house. Like, we got two sets of bunk beds in my bedroom, and I had like, our drummer was above me, I was on the bottom, our bass player and our singer. Like, we were all, and like, because none of us could afford rent, like we couldn't move out, we were touring, so my parents had us over, so it was just like, but yeah, none of that was ever like explicitly stated as like, that's just how my parents are. It's just like, they just showed their support through actions. So it's like, we never had conversations that I know that they didn't want me to be on tour and be a musician. Like, but they would never have injected their own, my dad never was like, "Come work at TELUS with me." Like, he was like, "You got your own thing.
You do you."
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and touring itself is not... Everyone thinks musicians are this glamorous thing where we get to like step on stage and we're rock stars. Mm-hmm. No. Like, you're stuck in a bus with 5 to 6 other dudes, no good food, no sleep for weeks on end.
Yeah.
Like, it's not glorious like you have a giant bus. Like,
Totally.
People don't realize that. They kind of think that's the biggest like misunderstanding about musicians is like, they have money. A, no, we don't. We're all poor. And B, like, it costs a lot for us to tour. That comes out of our pocket. That comes out of our families being supportive.
Totally.
And I think that goes for any art discipline. Realistically, you have to have support.
Totally.
And I find that becomes a motivation too, when you have like, for example, like your dad who taught you the business aspect. Like, even if it's not, they don't understand the artistic element, understanding that there is a viable future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, they could have and I know there are parents or out there that wouldn't see that. It's just like, it's art. It doesn't make sense. You're not going to make, the standard joke of like, "Oh, you got an art degree. What are you going to do with that?" Like, all this stuff. And it's like, well, you can actually do a lot. But again, back to what I said earlier, is like, you do have to learn this like business side of it and how it works in the real world, because I'm of both minds. I get super head in the cloudsy, I keep saying, and like, like really creative and all that stuff, but you have to be both of those things. And it's the same as on the outside. I think people view arts as very singular. And it's like, well, no, but I mean, if you kind of take these two worlds and meld them, then yeah, you can do it. And there's lots of, you know, it's funny, like meeting other designers and like working with Epitaph, working at Rise, working with all these designers that have done amazing work. You realize that that's the common thing, is that we're all kind of grubby, scrubby punk rock kids, tattooed up, have always just had kind of dead end jobs, and then fell into this thing as a creative, but just figured out how to meld those two things and be like, okay, it's tax season. Yeah, it sucks, but I gotta do it. But by doing that, I get to do album artwork for The Ghost Inside or Every Time I Die or whoever, all these cool bands. And you're like, if learning how to put money aside to pay my taxes and reply to emails and be reliable grants me that, then it seems so much easier.
Yeah, so much easier.
You know, like it's just like, oh, I can do that if I do this, then okay. And really, I'm oversimplifying it, but really, like, at least in the music industry, that's the key, is like being reliable. Like, I now am at the position where I hire out work. Like, we have so much work coming in. You know, a band will come to us that wants whatever, something specific. That's another thing, knowing your strengths. Don't take on something that you can't do, you know. And I used to do that. A band would be like, hey, can you illustrate this crazy thing? And I'd say yes, but I couldn't. I would do a terrible job. So now, being in the position of being able to outsource, and how much I see it, of like, I'll find a great artist on Instagram or wherever, and message them and be like, and you know, I'm not throwing pennies at them. It's good budgets. Like, hey, we got X amount of dollars here for you that we'll pay you today if you can do that. And just no reply, just nothing. Like, and it's like, man, like, it is rampant out there of just how many artists just don't know how to do that. And it's killing their career. Like, there are lots of good artists out there that just by being reliable and having that businessy aspect would be hugely successful.
Yeah.
But I think there's that block of like how the world treats the arts. You know, there's maybe that reluctance for a lot of artists. You know, it just, I don't know. It's hard to quantify. You know,
especially the arts. Like, you find that everyone loves music and everyone loves paintings and everyone loves this, but no one really ever wants to pay for it.
Yeah,
you know, that's
totally.
like, that's the thing, is like, it takes time, takes effort, takes energy. Like,
yeah,
it takes a lot
yeah,
to do what we do on a regular and still be able to put food in the fridge and like, you know, keep a roof over our head. And I think that where you've got to is inspiring and like a level of achievement that most people want. Like you said, you get to raise your child from home while working. Most dads don't get to do that. So I think that that's a really beautiful thing, that you get to embrace everything at once and still manage to do it in a way that you're happy and, like like you said, you love your job.
Oh yeah.
And I think that that's what's key, is most people live a life where they don't love their job and they just never had that push to do what they wanted. So it's really cool to see, like, you working with local bands, like you said. Now you're working with A Ghost Inside, and like, these are bands that are huge in our eyes for like the metal community, I guess, or what you would classify it as. But like, even the photo that's right there with Popular Monster, like, you have such a repertoire of bands that you've worked with that it would almost make any other graphic designer so jealous. And and you're so humble about it. And I think that that's what definitely separates you from a lot of other graphic designers, at least that I've personally met.
Yeah, I mean, because it's still super unbelievable. I don't know if you're a fan of Perfect Circle, but I just worked with Billy Howardall on his solo record.
project. I did see that.
So I did all the packaging for that, and it looks awesome. But again, like, I remember the day I was in grade 9 or grade 10, and I bought the first Perfect Circle record. And it's like, and I told him that, like, we like finished the job, and I just was like, hey, Billy, I just want you to know, like, this has been an absolute pleasure to work with you, because I got to work one-on-one with him. You know, you're a huge inspiration to me, and, you know, I remember the day I bought your first record. You know, usually when you're in the industry, you're not supposed to gush and be like all, like, whatever, but I can't help it, man, because I'm still just a kid. I'm still just like 16 years old, and that's like Love and Death here. That's Brian Welch from Korn. That's his other band, and they're a smaller band. So he contacted me directly, and we like talked on the phone, and we've kind of become buddies over the whole process. And then he reached out to me like I think it was last September before the new Korn album came out and was like, hey man, do you want to work on some pitches for the new Korn album? So I did like a whole, and like that was just a personal phone call. Like he called me from his hotel room while they were on tour, and it was like man, how do you not fangirl? Like that's the thing. So you try to be cool and you want people, but like man, I'm still like, that's, I don't want to swear, but it's really effing cool, man.
Right.
It's super exciting, and so I think that's the key of like following your passion, and what you're passionate about is like you don't have to like kind of really grow up in that sense. Like I'm still really into the bands I was into when I was 15, and I'm still love discovering new music, which like a lot of people in there, like I'm in my late 30s, there's a lot of people I know that just, I still listen to what I listened to in high school. And that's cool and that's fine. And I like, I love what I listened to in high school as well. But there's this like constant pursuit, right? Of just like, oh man, like I'm still in that world, and then all these other things, like life just happened around, I met my wife and got married and had kids, and like I'm able to buy a car like off of being a designer and making album covers. Like it blows my mind. So I mean, I know you see it, like, thank you for saying it's like as humble, but I mean, I don't even think of it. It's just like I'm just as giddy, man. Like this stuff all excites me. I love waking up and doing my job. It's super cool. So yeah, it comes across as humbleness. I definitely like, I don't want to be like, oh no, like it's nothing, because it's cool. Like I know it's cool.
Yeah, no, like it's probably one of the coolest things that any musician, somebody who has been on stage and has busted ass, knowing what it's like to struggle to get to the level of where you have major artists that you look up to contacting you to do work on a random phone call. Like that's inspiring for any level of art, because it is possible.
Yeah.
Like we're from Kelowna. It's a tiny little region.
Totally.
But you have people from all over the world reaching out to you to work with you. And that's hard work.
Yeah.
Like it does, you can't expect to put in 5 years and be like, oh, I'm going to be famous at what I do.
Totally.
It's a grind. Most musicians, most artists won't make it into their late 30s. Especially nowadays. Like unless you're a pop star, you're not going to get famous being a musician unless you're late 30s, 40. I find that is now the common age. And with art, it's starting to, I find the same thing. You find a lot of older artists are getting more popularity, and not older artists, I guess, but like not like teenage artists, where it used to be like they were looking for the fresh cream of the crop, where they still haven't even like cultivated their art style. As where like the people who have dedicated the years to working that have made it to a level now that is incredible. So that level that you've got to, I think, is insane. And like what's 5 top artists that you've got to do work for?
Love and Death was a big one. Like working with Brian from Korn was just like insane to me. Billy's another one. Those are like, huge feather in my hat moments. I'm looking down there at like CDs I've worked on.
Right.
Of Mice and Men was big. Of Mice and Men, I did the Defy record with the circuit board, all in like foil stamped. I should have brought some records up. I have a whole bunch of records. I'm gonna show some stuff off. But funny enough, is Spirit Box right now. Like Spirit Box is really cool. They're a Victoria band. Who has just blown up in the last year. Probably one of the biggest like heavy rock acts right now on the planet.
Yeah,
like,
I would say hands down probably the biggest at the moment.
Yeah, they're like, cover of Revolver, cover of Kerrang, winning awards left and right of best new artist, best international breakthrough, best, all this stuff. They're exploding. And I started working with them just when they were, still like an independent Victoria band, their bass player Bill was my barber in Vancouver, and he hooked it up. He was cutting my hair and was like, "Oh, I'm in a band. Do you want to like do some stuff? Do you want to make us a T-shirt?" And I was like, "Sure." And I made them a T-shirt, and then it kind of like just like snowballed, and like a single cover, and then another single cover, and then like, hey, we're gonna do like a series of singles, but we want them all to like tie together. Can you do like 6 singles? But we don't have a lot of money, so we'll get you back, bro. And it was like, yeah, of course, sure. And so I did those, and then they just like, it kept going, it kept going. I worked at Rise Records. I had already worked at Rise at that point. And then my boss texted me and was like, hey, you're from Canada. Do you know Spirit Box? And I was like, actually, yeah, I do. And he was like, okay, we're looking at signing them right now. And I was like, oh, crazy.
Right.
So then, yeah, they got signed and to the label that I happened to work for. And they just, they kept me on board. At that point, they could have picked whoever to do their artwork, even though I was the designer there. Like I said, we outsource stuff at the label. You know, I get to hire other people. But they're like, no, we want you to do it. And we want you to do a Kevin Moore, like go nuts. So I was able to like we did a die cut sleeve. We did like vellum paper in it with like really cool PMS inks and stuff, like reflective inks. We did a reflective foil inside gatefold spread. So when you open it up, the inside's all shiny. Like we just did, I just went nuts. All the stuff that a local band wants to do but can't afford. It was like, let's do it. And so we did it. And yeah, they exploded. So out of all these cool bands that I've worked with, funny enough, probably the biggest is like Spirit Box. Like really like they're huge and just super great to work with. Like they're awesome, and you know, then they've remained, you know, they're huge, but you know, Courtney or Bill or Mike or any of those guys will still text me, and you know, we still chat. And whenever I'm in Victoria and they happen to be in Victoria, we'll go grab a beer. So it's cool. They're like old friends that I've now seen like every step of the way, like all the way through it to like, and I mean, and they're not done. It's going to keep happening and they're going to be huge. But I mean, I don't really see any sign of not ever working with them again. If it ever came to it, like I fully support it. Like they can hire literally anyone they want.
Yeah.
Like go for it. I would like, and obviously there's merits and growth and like visual change, you know, and that kind of thing. But as of right now, I mean, the sky's the limit with them, and it's really, really, really rad. I'm trying to think of other ones. Let me just think by. What else do we have?
Yeah, no,
here?
there's such an amazing collection here.
Yeah,
I'm
some
like,
cool
oh
stuff.
my.
Hot Water Music was fun. They're a cool classic band. Oh, Cane Hill was.
So these are all the ones that you've worked on?
Yeah, so all the duplicates down here, so all these duplicate CDs
so
are all
cool.
ones that I've worked on. The bottom 2 rows. Yeah, so let me see. I don't know if I have. This is Tetrarch. This is this one. This cover was actually done by Alan Ashcraft, and then I did the rest of the layout. So that's a bad one to show you. But Cane Hill, this one was really fun. These guys are dope. Just the old Smashed Mosquito, just super rad band. This layout was really, really fun. Again, they just let me do whatever I wanted to do, and I was able to.
I love that, a squished mosquito.
Yeah, it's
Didn't you
awesome.
have one recently that was like
The dead bird?
the dead bird?
Yeah. So my wife. Oh, I hit my microphone. Am I still good?
As long as it's plugged in there.
Okay, yeah. My wife found a dead bird in our backyard here, but it was super cool. It was like splayed out, like open like this, and the bone structure was absolutely like perfect. And it was gross. Like most people would be, that's disgusting. You know, probably a cat got it or whatever, and it just sat there and put on gloves and put it in a little styrofoam box, and it lived in our garage, decomposing for like a year. This is gross. I'm sorry, but the pursuit of art, and then a band hit me up, and like I knew I had this thing, and I wanted to photograph it, and I knew what I wanted to do. And they had this concept, and it fit, and I was like, okay, here's my idea. It's a little crazy, you guys. And they were like, yep, do it, go for it. And so I can't remember quite what I did. I put like pink blush on my hands, and then black charcoal. Like got charcoal over my hands, and then dipped my hands in clear glue, let the glue dry clear, put more charcoal on, and then started peeling off pieces of the glue, and it looked like my hands had burned, like, because it was just exposing like this red, the pink blush underneath, and it looked like really gnarly burnt hands. It was really gross, and I picked up this bird, and then holding it like, in a weird position like this, over top of just a white background, covering this bird, and my wife was over top, and she took the camera and shot this, and that's the album cover, and it's this really cool splayed out like dead bird.
So
it looks,
cool.
Yeah, it looks rad. I wish I was gonna pull it up on Instagram, but yeah, if you can find it, the band is called So It Begins, and they're from Texas. That's the cover that I got that guitar on trade for.
So It Begins.
Yeah.
That's so funny. There's a lot of incredible bands coming out of Texas right now.
Oh yeah. There's.
Oh my. Yeah, like,
and Fire from the Gods is another one that I work with. Yeah, I work with, and I'm going to be working on their new record right now. So
like, I get giddy, and I'm just like a fan. I'm just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Fire from the Gods, like, I love them.
Oh, they're
There's
awesome.
So many good bands out there right now too, and that's the thing is, like, COVID has opened up, I feel like, a lot for the music industry because it was so shut down that we all had to reach out to each other. And like, I think that was one amazing thing that did happen. And other than the fact, like, music stopped for 2.5 years, but like,
the
creative aspects, like, we branched out towards so many different people.
It stopped. Touring stopped. And the first like month after COVID hit, and I was terrified. Like, I worked with Rise at that point, and I was like, well, are they going to can the guy that works remote from his house in Canada? Like, I was so like, well, whatever, I don't work here anymore. But I was just writing canceled across a bunch of tour posters for like the first month, and it stuck around. But then bands started getting us content and submitting stuff, and EPs and cool like reimaginings of songs, and like, there was the silver lining. I think obviously COVID is horrible, and I wish it hadn't happened, but for the music industry was kind of eye-opening for a lot of bands, is showing that like we don't necessarily need to tour yourself until you're crazy. You know what I mean? Like we used to do, like tour. You're always on the road, and you're playing for 10 people here, 30 people here, maybe 100 people here, if you're lucky, like blah, 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 all this stuff, and like having trouble at the border, and then finally getting across the border after, like, like just so difficult. And then now through COVID, seeing that, good merch design, having good merch, having good, doing EPs, doing the content that you can put out as a creative, you can keep churning this stuff out, and everyone they can access it online. And there's this huge understanding of like, well, yeah, we can't see you live, so this is how we're going to support you. And essentially, from like the background of it, like working at a label was like, we got busier. Like, it didn't slow down. Yeah, tours slowed down, and that obviously is a huge hit to bands that make a large amount of their income touring. But like, from the world of, like you said, like creative and just content, putting it out and putting out pieces of music. And then like, who is the pop? Charlie XCX. I love Charlie XCX. She's awesome. She just came out with her new album, but she did an album that was like a pandemic album, and it was super heartfelt and like really, like, it was awesome. It was so great. And there's a lot of stuff that happened of just, I mean, it turns into like, now bands kind of have to be a content train, and you have to like, to really go for it, write good songs, make good songs, jam, and but you don't necessarily have to tour yourself silly. Like, you could feasibly be a successful band, with good content, good songs, making records, putting out EPs, putting out singles, doing all this stuff from the comfort of your home. And maybe, you could all still work full-time jobs and say like, okay, I'm going to take my 3 weeks or 2 weeks vacation time, and we're going to book a solid 2-week tour where we just go down into Washington or California or whatever, and then come back home. Like, and that would be feasibly now in this post-COVID world, like almost enough, like to maintain a strong career. Obviously, you'd want to build that touring up a little bit, but it's so much nicer for younger bands. Remember, like when we were coming up, like there was no Facebook or like anything. We had MySpace and that was cool, but it wasn't the sales hub of like selling merch online. Like bands didn't sell merch online.
No, it was flyers.
Yeah.
Handbills.
Yeah. And you had to tour, and if you wanted to get a CD of a band that you liked that wasn't on a label, you had to go to their show, and hopefully their show came near your house.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's obviously COVID is awful and it sucks, but for the music industry and the creative aspect of it, I think it like really opened a lot of doors for bands to be able to succeed without necessarily having to kill themselves on the road, and just grind so hard to what end, right?
I know that there's one band locally that is really successful at doing what you just mentioned, and that is Living Machines.
Oh yeah, totally.
They're a comic book.
Yeah.
I've never seen them perform locally, but
I've never seen them live either.
That's what I mean. They've never performed locally, but
Yeah.
they're following
Yeah.
with the content. Like they're amazing with what they do. Hands down, it's surprising how well they've done during the 2 years of no shows. But yeah, no, it's being a creative is a unique it's a unique lifestyle. And I think a lot of people like that's our whole series is about unique and creative people. So we're all different. We've all got these weird little quirks in our heads. And like I think that's what makes us the modern day Da Vinci's. You know what I mean? Because I think that's what it is. Like you can't just be one art. Like if you're a painter, you're also doing a bunch of other mediums. If you're a musician, you're probably doing a bunch of other mediums as well.
Yeah.
If you're a graphic designer, you don't just touch on one style, but you're also probably a photographer. So like being a creative is not just like this little box defining yourself. And I think that is creatives are the most entrepreneurial people on the planet because you have to take this vision that you have in your head and turn it into a reality, which isn't just easy to do. So like, no, it's a unique thing. And I think that what you've created over the past, 10, 15 years
Of solid work? Yeah.
is incredible because it's inspiring for a lot of people but like in any other artistic discipline. I think the hard work and even the fact that you don't have education behind it, like you don't need education. You know what I mean? Like I was saying earlier with like music theory is that they're guidelines, they're not rules.
Totally.
And break the rules.
Totally.
Like break the rules, be yourself, because eventually somebody will be coming to you and asking for Kevin Moore.
Totally. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I want to thank you for everything, man. This
Absolutely,
incredible.
man. Thank you for coming
it's
by.
been an honor to have you and get to talk and hear about some of your experiences because it's eye-opening for me too.
Totally. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No worries.
Thank you very much. It was awesome.
We'll see you guys next time.
See you guys.